Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Can you believe it's August already? I warned you, this year's passing us by really quickly. Summer's coming to a close, and now we got to start worrying about the holidays and all that kind of stuff on the horizon. But I just want to take a moment and thank my sponsors, keto-mojo.com. It's a great website. If you have a chance to go check out Keto Mojo, that is my go-to for blood ketone levels and sugar checking to double check our continuous glucose monitors. They have a wealth of information there, just tons of fitness advice, nutrition advice, you name it. Go check it out. They have a ton of great lectures there that they've stored over the years. And it really is a great supplement to whatever you're listening to now, just for education. And then, of course, Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. They're doing great work, and they have vegan offerings for those who choose to go that plant-based route. Also, their traditional chocolate and vanilla shakes are amazing. So go check out Get Health, GETHLTH.com. Discount code METHEALTH, METHEALTH. And also you can find out some of their offerings as far as education. Also, they have a great website with tons of recipes and, to get you through the rest of the summer, some great ideas. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I took a week off to recuperate. Now I'm back. We had the low carb San Diego meeting that was awesome with a lot of great speakers that hopefully we're going to have on the podcast in the near future. But I have two smart ones here. The Great Menopause Myth. If you're looking, it's a super amazing book, and we've talked about it on Low Carb MD, so you can go back and listen to that if you want more details. But I have Maria Claps and Kristin Johnson here, two smart functional medicine practitioners who are just setting the world on fire and helping a lot of women and their husbands or boyfriends or whatever it might be to survive life. So welcome. It's great to have you. Great to see you both again.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So for people who don't know, give them a little bit of background about yourselves, how you got together and how you're doing this thing.
Well, I think what you called us was very sweet. We don't actually use that terminology ourselves at functional medicine practitioners, but it's perfectly fine. I'm a health coach. I'll let Kristin give her kind of what she is as well. But we're just two women that are really, really passionate about midlife women's health. We have been mentored by physicians for years and years now, and not just one-off sessions. We're talking like probably monthly basis or every other month like that, by various physicians who have been kind of in the women's midlife health space for decades. And we just kind of found each other through really, sometimes it can be a little bit of a small orbit, the people that are really kind of moving the health needle and are concerned about health and wellness outside of just, sort of like the government accepted talking points. So we found each other, we worked together a little bit separately on a project, and then we said, let's kind of get married from a business perspective. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. But basically, I 43 or so, I started to experience really significant perimenopause shifts. And I sought out a doctor in New York City that I thought was kind of going to be, in line with some of the things I was starting to believe about just holistic health and wellness. Turns out it wasn't a great visit. It wasn't horrible by any means, but I left that visit saying, okay, I'm really interested in this and I need to learn more. So it was at that point that I went back to school and sought mentorships. So it's been about 13 years of like intense kind of passion and education around the topic of midlife women's health and the health changes that we experience as we age.
Yeah. So I'm a board certified holistic nutritionist, a nutritional therapy practitioner, and was really honestly went to go into that work to help my family. If I'm totally honest, my son was struggling with some things. My dad was sick with cancer. I was definitely in the throes of midlife change, but I didn't quite appreciate it or know it because I didn't have a benchmark. My mom went through menopause at 32. And so I was just sort of in this space and starting to help other people. And then I started realizing everyone I'm sort of attracting looks like me, has the same complaints, things that were going on. And it started to occur to me that this phase of life, I mean, I think Marie and I would both admit, and this is a common belief now, that if you're 43, you can't even fathom that this is a midlife transition because you're too young to have this be happening to you. And so it was a big wake up call for me that things were really shifting much earlier than I had been led to believe I would feel and sense this shift. And that's when I just sort of started digging in. And like Maria said, attending medical conferences where sometimes we had to ask, can we attend? We're not doctors. And it was a CME based conference. And, we would get special dispensation to go, but we just really wanted to learn and learn and learn about this space and then start helping other women because it is something that catches a lot of women off guard, does happen earlier than we think physically should be happening because we think of ourselves in our 40s and young and vital. And you still are, but there are undeniable changes that are happening. And unfortunately, it catches up with us usually by 60. And so this is where Marie and I are like, look, we've got like 1 to 2 decades here where we could really change people's lives if we oriented them to what's going on and helped them, sort of shift their daily habits to address those things.
Yeah, so hugely important. And I think, one thing that struck me, I was at the low carb conference in San Diego, and it was a lot of people were talking about, a lot of environmental factors, stress factors, maybe social media possibly contributing. But the point was they were saying that young girls are now going through, they're starting puberty way younger, like 3 or 4 or 5 years younger than they used to.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking on the other end of the spectrum, we're going to see younger and younger women going through menopause at a younger age.
Yeah,
For
we
sure.
call that milestones of reproductive change are changing. Milestones of reproduction, like women, like you said, girls going into puberty really young, and then women experiencing menopause at younger ages. So
And waiting longer to have kids too, and so we're seeing a lot more of PCOS, a lot of these polycystic, all these metabolically based problems with I think our bodies are just so confused, being under chronic stress, worries and all that, and so for me as a doc, I was seeing, I was doing low carb keto with some women, and they're doing, I mean, a lot of women actually, and they're when they're going through menopause, it just makes it so much more difficult from many aspects. One is just being, on edge and stressed and worried, more cortisol through the roof, and just these imbalances of hormones. It just makes it more of it, and having so many more life responsibilities. It just makes it such a challenge to stick to a program or to plan their meals or to, and so I was actually really impressed I took over. There was a doctor who was doing a lot of your type of work in San Diego, in California, but was unable to after the COVID thing, where you couldn't do telemedicine as much and things like that. So I took over some of those patients, and I was shocked to hear how much the once they went on hormones, it was a huge game changer for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Marie and I like to talk about that there's, we've kind of been slowly identifying the phrase, but it's essentially this disconnect between our 21st century living, right? And kind of this primal bodies that we have. And if we look at just, not that long ago, we were not moving away from home. We had kind of intergenerational living, not necessarily under the same roof, but sort of in the same area. There was more support mechanisms around us. We didn't have social media, right? So we didn't have these exogenous stresses, didn't have near as much processed food products. I don't even want to call them foods, but, things that were essentially cellular kind of disrupting in our bodies and whatnot. And that, I think, is why some people are like, but this shouldn't be this way because it wasn't like this for my mom, or it wasn't like this for my grandmother, or whatever. And Marie and I are like, none of us are living today the way we used to live. And that environmental shift has driven a physical shift, and what kind of how we're experiencing things. And it also wasn't talked about. Let's be honest. Like, menopause is du jour right now. It's pretty hip to be talking about it, and there's a big boom around it. But ask anyone, Maria's in my age, in our mid 50s, our grandmothers never talked about this, right? And so there's also, is there kind of a taboo, or there's just sort of a naivete around the whole topic and why this should even matter to women? And I think that you add in the stresses, you add in all these changes that are going on, and then you add in hormone decline, and they're like, I must not be fasting enough, right? I must not be grounding enough. I must not be whatever. And these women sort of lean into some of these interventions that are pretty harsh at this time of life. And Maria and I are like, actually, it's you don't have enough hormones. And if we could address that piece of it, you would kind of recapture that vitality that you're feeling you're losing.
Yeah, sometimes it's just taking out the bad stuff, right? If you get it, like we're up against it, the stress and the sleep and all these other things. But replacing the hormones really makes it a lot. And I'm shocked, like replacing some progesterone, women say I'm sleeping better, my cravings go away, and I'm not like stressed out all the time. And are there certain ones that you say, gosh, certain things that you say, okay, I talk to you and go, this is probably going to be low testosterone, or it's going to be low estrogen or low progesterone. There's certain things that women who are listening now can say, oh my gosh, that might be me.
You mean
Well,
symptomatically, like things
yeah.
that
Yeah,
they feel?
symptomatically, like they'll come to you and say, I'm having these issues that, irritability, whatever it may be. Maria, you have something like that, you go, oh, this is going to be low testosterone, low progesterone, things like that.
Yeah, sure. So flooding periods can be low progesterone. Low mood can be low estrogen. Just like low motivation. We talk about, like you just mentioned, taking out the bad stuff. Well, you got to almost have the motivation to take out the bad stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so it is like nuanced ways that hormones can even help in that. Yeah. So low mood, low estrogen. What else, Kristen?
Changes in anxiety. Like, you'll see a lot of women who
Mm.
suddenly are like, I'm anxious and I've never been anxious before, never really struggling with deep mental health issues. Suddenly we'll have this kind of onset happen. Yes, there can be a shift in libido, but Marie and I are going to be hard in saying libido is so multifactorial.
Mhm.
So blaming low hormones on a shifting libido is probably lower down on the list than other
Mhm.
priorities that we need to address.
Mhm.
um, changes in where your fat is depositing. I think that's one that really catches a lot of women off guard. Suddenly we're from hips and buttocks right up, and they're like, they call it meno belly or my tire, or, however women like to talk about it. But that is a hormonal decline that is triggering this shift in the body fat deposition, dry vaginal tissues, etc. But there's other things that women don't kind of piece together. It could be you're getting sick more often. It could be your eyes are drier. It could be that your blood pressure started to go up a little bit when you go to see your doctor, and you're like, wow, that's weird. I wasn't feeling anxious coming in here, and my blood pressure's higher than it was 6 months ago. Changes in your lipid profile. These are things that, women might get hints of from their doctor, but they don't understand what's happening, or that this could be low hormones.
A
Yeah.
slow a
Oh, go
slow
ahead, please.
creep towards insulin resistance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
Without yeah.
I think
Mhm.
that's a huge part of it, and that's what I was convinced of before I looked into the hormones more. And I have a practitioner in my office, Leah. She's doing great work, and because it's not my area of expertise, so I want to have someone who knows what they're doing. I don't want to mess someone up by giving them the wrong hormones and everything. So I'm like, talk to her; she knows what she's talking about. But I think it makes a huge difference in all of these things. And if your hormones are off and you're not sleeping cause it's a flood of problems that
Mhm.
come, right? If you're not sleeping, you're more on edge, you're more grumpy, you get more cravings. And we have tons of data on this, and you eat more. And so you go, okay, how do I fix this sleep problem? How do I fix this problem? And sometimes just doing metabolic stuff is not going to fix it. If your hormones are
Right.
off, it's like if you're not making insulin, you have type 1 diabetes, it's going to be hard to intervene, right? There's certain things that we need to supplement. I think, just going back, and maybe you can comment on this, when the Women's Health Initiative came out and everyone freaked out and said, no hormones, stop them, stop everyone on the hormones. And then they reevaluate and go, maybe we were wrong after years, yeah. What's your feeling on that? Because that's the biggest concern is I see women who are struggling and they go, no, I'm never going on hormones because it kills people.
Yeah. Kills people
Right.
and causes cancer. That's the big claim. And, yes, you're right. The researchers have walked back all of their conclusions. Nobody is any longer saying that real hormones cause cancer. And the problem was that a lot of women don't realize the hormones used in the WHI were actually not. They were drugs. They were not hormones. They sort of kind of maybe looked like them a little bit, but they weren't the same molecular structure as the hormones that we produced. And so, for women who, like, let's say have had children and they're saying, oh, I'm not going on hormones, they cause cancer. I'm like, how did you get out of pregnancy without cancer then? Because you had these massive levels of hormones in your body circulating, and your body was not just fine, but it was actually protected from a variety of things that you just didn't even realize it. So, yeah, real hormones. People will say bioidentical is a marketing term. Maria and I are going to push back on that. Bioidentical is talking about molecular structure of the hormone. And bioidentical hormones, whether you make them from your ovaries or you take them through hormone therapy, are incredibly safe, and not just safe, they're health protective. They're actually cancer protective when you have the right hormones in the right regimen, in the right body. So we just want women to not be afraid of them. Your hormones served you your whole life. They've been your superpower, and you probably just didn't even realize it. They're what's going to continue to help you age in a healthful manner.
Maria, do you have anything to add?
Oh, no, I love what Kristin said. It's not just that hormones are safe, they're actually health protective. And I think that that is the message that is largely lost today, even by practitioners of functional medicine and, doctors that are, say, hormone uh, friendly, right?
Right.
They may be hormone friendly, HRT friendly, but they're still very much trapped up into the symptom model. Hormones are to get rid of hot flashes. Hormones are to hot flashes.
Lubricate your vaginal tissue.
Yeah, something like that. But we go one step further and say, no, hormones are to kind of repair the endothelium of your blood vessels. Hormones are to prevent you from getting osteoporosis. Hormones are to keep your brain healthy and clear the tau proteins. So it's not just that they're safe, they're health protective. And Kristin said it, like, yes, but I think people like that needs to be reaffirmed and, discussed more often.
Yeah, there's so much. And I kind of sometimes use the functional and holistic. I kind of see it the same way a lot of times, but
Yeah,
I
it's
understand
okay.
the
Yeah.
difference. But it's one of those things that like when I'll refer to Western medicine, my type of allopathic stuff is that I'll see women come in and they'll like, yeah, I've been having chronic urinary infections, but the
Yeah.
urinalysis is negative every time, and you're like, got hit with so many antibiotics that
Hmm.
their entire gut microbiome has to be gone. But the doctor's like, well, as soon as you get symptoms, here's an antibiotic. Here you go. Here you go. And I was
Yeah.
like, could this possibly be hormonal? They go on hormones and it goes away. They go, oh, I haven't had a
Yeah.
urinary infection. Well, it wasn't. It was vaginal irritation or urethral irritation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that piece of it, I mean, if women are scared of anything, they should be scared of losing their gut microbiome. We know that that can heavily influence breast cancer risk, right? And what modulates, protects, and keeps intact the gut microbiome? Hormones, female sex hormones, estradiol in particular. So, when women are scared of these things down the road, they need to sort of step back and learn a little bit about what these root cause issues are, and then realize that those hormones actually protect the root cause from starting in the first place.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the other thing and you could probably speak to this more than I can is in women in particular, when you lose the estrogen and progesterone protection, basically, what happens is you start building your subcutaneous fat, the fat that's in the love handles and the butt and the hips, like you're saying, in the breast, go to the middle. So they get the big middle from this hormone depletion and insulin resistance. But when you look at it, so as an example, to explain this maybe better than I'm trying to now, is I had a female went on hormone replacement and she gained 10 pounds. And she said, I'm flabbier than I was before. And I don't know, I'm gaining weight. And when we did the body composition, she had put on like 8 pounds of muscle, right? And her fat distribution went from her visceral fat dropped dramatically. So as a practitioner, you go, okay, you're shifting that. So basically, your body wants to store it in the less dangerous places with lower inflammation and all that. And then it goes to the visceral fat. So postmenopausal women are at markedly increased risk of cardiovascular disease. even women in their 20s who weigh 400 pounds are at lower risk than the postmenopausal female with tons of visceral fat. And I see it. I see women that maybe 350 pounds and their visceral fat is like 1 liter, and
Mhm.
someone else who looks thin on the outside, they have this big visceral. So we're redistributing our fat in a place where it's more dangerous,
Yeah.
right? If we're not on hormone replacement.
Yeah, and you add in the whole insulin issue, right? We become progressively more insulin resistant, and that has everything to do with shifts in the gut microbiome. It has to do with estrogen signaling to insulin. Like there's so many ways that this happens. And so you add up this cardiometabolic equation, and it's not just an aesthetic issue, which is what women are usually focused on, right? Is that belly, but it's now you're catching up with men for heart disease risk. And how many women realize that in postmenopausal years, heart disease is the number one killer of women, not breast cancer, right? So shouldn't we be worried about protecting the heart? And estrogen is going to be our best friend to do that.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I was just looking at I show my patient this study where Noakes, Professor Tim Noakes went back and reanalyzed the data from the Women's Health Initiative. And you see the biggest by far, the hazard ratio was like 10.6 or something like that, was diabetes. Next was poor metabolic health, metabolic syndrome. And it goes down the line, then you see LDL way down at the bottom. You think, holy
Yeah.
cow! I mean, that is what is insulin resistant if you're storing more visceral fat. Really, the more visceral fat we have, the worse we do. It's not about the general weight. It's really if you have muscle mass, are you exercising? Are you watching your stress? So all these things are a factor, and it's amazing how we worry about number 10 on the list, and number one, no biggie. Give me my cookies, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So any other excitement, anything that you come across that's helped either nutritionally, exercise wise, anything that you go, this is a pearl that you have that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, Kristen kind of alluded to it, and that is the thing that seems to get a perimenopausal or postmenopausal woman's attention is her changing body, her weight, what the scale number is. And as a result, what they tend to do is exercise more. And that exercise, if it's really intense, is probably the wrong thing for them at this point, right? I just still see that whole bay of treadmills and steppers at the gym, and the women are just really going fast on it, and very few women in the weight room. Right. And then they're still they're stuck in very like USDA food guidelines, like low fat and, just overall just low calories. So many of our clients just don't eat, they don't nourish themselves, and they just stay stuck in a state of poor health. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the stress piece, I think, is something that we layer on top of that, right? We're physiologically stressing ourselves with this excess cardio in the gym. We're physiologically stressing ourselves with not enough calories and not enough protein. I mean, I always love to point out to people like those survivor shows, like Alone and things. They don't tap out or, get ill because they didn't eat enough carbs. They are always lacking protein. We're going to die from lack of protein. And women see this as sort of this, meaty approach to nutrition is masculine. And we're like, no, 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 no. And it doesn't even have to be meat. There's seafood, there's eggs, there's Greek yogurt, there's so many things out there. But if we are not replacing those amino acids, we are absolutely destroying our muscle tissue. And our muscle tissue loss is going to lead to, sure, locomotion problems, power, strength problems, but it's going to lead to inflammation. It's going to lead to immune system dysregulation. It's going to lead to weaker bones, etc. So the simple hack for every woman is eat enough protein, and lift some heavy things. And if you just did that and you ignored every other bit of advice, even on hormones, you're probably going to be in better shape than most people. And we don't mean better shape aesthetically, we mean better shape from a health perspective. So it doesn't have to be that hard. But I think women are trying to chase, as Maria said, the number on the scale, or chase the size 4 pant that they wore in their 30s. And that's what is derailing them from kind of seeing what the real imperative is about this hormone loss.
Yeah, and I think I think it's going to be more critically important in the future because the number one indicator of longevity is muscle mass, living
Yeah.
longer. So if you're restricting protein, you're starving yourself all the time, you're working out like crazy. Their study actually is very interesting because I think this fits in with what you're talking about. They took menopausal women and they put them on a calorie restricted diet. Half the women were sleep deprived and stressed. The other one were chill and slept enough. And a majority of the stressed women were burning muscle mass as their fuel source. They were losing muscle mass, not fat mass. The other ones were losing pure fat mass. And you go, oh my gosh. Now we have Ozempic thrown into the equation, and what we're seeing is a lot of muscle mass loss. So
Yeah.
you lose weight on the skin, you go, oh my gosh, I lost weight, but you lost muscle. Guess what? Now you're putting on more visceral fat down the road, and it's gonna be either you're on the drug the rest of your life, right, with other side effects and problems, or it's going to be a problem down the road. I mean, I think after a year or 2 years, we're going to see a total disaster on our hands. Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, I mean, Ozempic, the thing that drives me nuts is if you look at it, even for those who are getting it for legitimate, diabetic health reasons, the requirements are that you strength train and you eat more protein and you eat lower carb. I mean, that's literally in the guidelines for taking Ozempic. And so if we're willing to do that, why don't we start with that and then see kind of what progress we get? But too many people are using the Ozempic as an easy button. They're skipping those main interventions of daily living. And yeah, they're losing it, hand over fist. And what's interesting, the study you said about the women, postmenopausal and stress and sleep deprived versus not. There's also another study that says, okay, we're going to put these women on the exact same caloric diet. We're going to have them lift weights. Half the group is going to get hormone therapy and the other half's not. Guess who gained more muscle? Doing the exact same thing. The hormone therapy
group,
given women.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if we're really going to be worried about our muscle tissue and our muscle loss as we age, we need to understand that that muscle is highly dependent upon sufficient estradiol too. And that's where we see a lot of women like beating themselves up. Like, I must be doing something wrong. And this is where Maria and I try and bring it all the way back to, no, it's just that you've lost something that you didn't realize you needed. And that's your estrogen. But yeah, the Ozempic thing is a whole nother ball of wax that I'm sure Maria has.
Well, I mean, so regarding that, if eating protein, Brian, we find that most women struggle physically, palpably with eating. I'm talking about women not on Ozempic now, eating enough protein, right? And I knew this theoretically for years. It's only been the past few years that I've really instituted it. I've made it like, this is my mission, my job, meal to meal, right? So just your average woman typically can be challenged by that, right? And then now we have women on Ozempic and you're supposed to eat that, but almost everyone that I've spoken to that's been on it, they're nauseated and they really truly have no appetite. So tell me how. I'd love to hear from someone on Ozempic successfully who said they were getting over 100 grams of protein, 130 whatever grams of protein per day. And also had
it's hard to do, without being nauseated, miserable, like it's
to work out as well in the gym.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, if I'm nauseous, I'm not going to hit the gym. So
the other thing is you lose you block some of the dopamine receptors, so you don't get that much fun from the food you used to have fun with. So you eat it and go, okay, it's not really exciting to me. But then guess what? Sex also that happens too. Spending time with your partner, spending time with your friends. So we're going to see some issues with depression, anxiety, stress getting worse. And, I think the one thing, most of us, especially people who are very health conscious, sometimes they'll be so type A that they work out, like you're saying, excessive over exercise, stressed all the time, and they can't just sit and be zen and relax and breathe. So a lot of women who are struggling say, please just breathe. Find some times during the day, just slow down, breathe, count your blessings a little bit. All these things that lower those stress hormones and raise oxytocin levels, right? And so being too aggressive too and saying, that's it, I'm going to lose this extra 1 pound I have on my abdomen or whatever it is. As an example of that, I got consulted with a physician from Texas, and I'm looking at her, Tracy, I'm thinking she's going to be 400 pounds. I look at her and she's like 92 pounds or something. Her sugars were absolutely like 300 in the afternoon. I'm like, what are you eating in the afternoon? I go, I don't eat. How many carbs do you eat? None. I don't eat any carbs. And she was doing HIIT training 2 hours a day.
Oh,
right. And I was like,
that's not even possible. True HIIT training can't be
true
2
HIIT
hours,
training, you
right?
can't do that. But it was like high intensity exercise. Right. Like, I mean, as much as it can be to go 2 hours, you're right. Absolutely correct on that. It's like, you can't sprint for a mile, right? You only sprint for a certain amount of time.
Right.
Anyways, her body was I go, okay, so you have to liberalize your carbs, cut back on your exercise a little bit. And she was like, are you kidding me? Look at my sugars. I go, watch. But it was all a cortisol stress response. So she was breaking down her own muscle tissue because her body's freaking out trying to survive. But the effects on the adrenaline and stress hormones and all this stuff is just, Once she relaxed, 3 days later, her sugars are normal.
Yeah.
It's great. Like it's the opposite of what we think. And our body's there to protect us, not to kill us.
Yeah. I think one of the hard things for women is that this time of life in particular, we have a lot of demands on us, whether it's professional, whether it's family of that we're raising or a partner we have to support and, you know, just kind of grow together. We've got parents at this phase of life that usually are needing some assistance if we're blessed to still have them around. If you've got
Mhm.
children, they're usually adolescent or teenage, early college. That's a trialing time of life. And we as women were kind of like, I can do this. I can do this. And we persevere. And we tell women all the time, like, just check in with yourself during the day. Are you gritting your teeth? Have you taken a deep breath? Is it all shallow breathing? Right? Have you been
Yeah.
outside yet? And just for no reason, like, no reason, right? Just like I think we've talked before, like I go out with my dogs just to walk outside with them and let them go potty, and I'm barefoot and I'm in the grass, etc. Really simple things. But when we don't check in with ourselves and we sort of make each day this like warpath, I'm going to get through it, I can do this sort of mentality, we create this locked up system that is just constantly dominating our life of like stress and hanging on and white knuckling it. And most women, when Marie and I tell them, like, do you know that less is more in this time of life? They're like, no, I can't possibly do that. Like, you can, but sometimes I think we take it on as an identity. We take a lot of pride in being able to take care of everyone and do all the things that actually might be hurting us down the road.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I think it's just being able to breathe a little bit, take it easy. Like my wife and I have coffee, we go for a hike first thing in the morning, play with the dogs, and we sit in the backyard and look at the sunrise, whatever.
Yeah,
And just that little bit of time, it changes your whole day. If you
does.
wake up first thing and look at social media, and we actually made a deal. We're like, okay, no, we're not looking at any social media before we have our time, because sometimes you just wake up and go, I wonder what's on Instagram. I wonder what Twitter's saying. What's Tro saying on Twitter or whatever. And so, those things, if you focus on what's good, I mean, it sounds so silly to people. And that's kind of why I started this podcast, because I was realizing people were in a chronic state of stress. And at some point, you have to say, what's good in the world? Because when you hear bad all over, you think everyone's terrible and out to get you all the time. And you get into that
Right.
mindset. So seeing people kind of break out and go, there's good. I mean, I look at the sunrise, or I'm going to, see some whatever. You see a deer running across the path when you're hiking in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
That kind of peace, it's like, if you're driven all the time, you never appreciate those things.
Yeah. And not everyone lives where you live, Brian. And Maria has a beautiful, you'll see her walking a lot with her husband and beautiful boardwalks over these marshy areas on the coast and everything. I mean, I want to talk to the people who are living in these urban environments that are like, you don't get it. It's like honking horns and sirens and, I'm in this high rise and everything else. And it's like, that's okay. True. You don't have nature out your front door, but you can breathe, right? You can work on a basic breathing habit. You can write down 5 things you're grateful for. You could do some meditation. You could engage in a prayer practice, like whatever it is. But every single one of us has the ability to essentially re-regulate that nervous system. It just takes intention. And I think that's what most of us are missing, is that sort of investing time in ourselves to take those moments or find moments during the day. And, fun fact, as much as we hate these little devices, there's apps for this, right? That'll literally tell you, stand up, take 10 breaths, walk outside your door. If you're in a high rise, go through the stair, whatever. But there's ways to do it. So when we hear people be like, you don't understand, we're like, we do understand. It's just going to require you to do something different than what you're really committed to doing right now.
Yeah, I think my watch is being sarcastic with me, because I'm working, like, well, I'll do this podcast and I have patients after this and all this. And then if I go to the bathroom, I walk to the bathroom, my watch will say, great job, you exercised. Like, come on. I worked out this morning. You
That's
don't give me
cute.
credit for that. But it's funny how it is, though. But having those little reminders, like, oh, I should relax. So even, some people set an alarm, go, I'm going to take, 5 minutes to
Yeah.
pray or do yoga or meditate. And it makes such a huge. I had a patient actually I was talking to about stress management. He's CEO of a corporation, super busy all the time. And I said, have you, and he doesn't sleep at night because his mind doesn't shut down.
Mm.
I said, have you ever thought about meditating or yoga or anything, like at lunchtime, take 5 minutes? And he starts laughing. I said, what's so funny? He said, you know what? I used to do it and I would sleep perfect. He said, now I don't have time to do it anymore.
That's
And I
so
don't sleep. So I'm like, then you do it twice as much. Or you have to really schedule it in like you're an appointment, like you would anywhere. Like getting
Right.
that little bit of exercise or activity or whatever. And you're right. It's funny because I tease Tro because I'm like, if I brought him to my house here in Arizona, he would be stressed out because he's used to the hustle and bustle and loud. And I'm like, people are like, what the heck? There's no noise here. What do you do? How do you live like this? You know what I mean? You get used to
Yeah.
that environment. And it's not necessarily a bad thing,
Right.
but it's really like if you find your peace there, great. Where do you find your peace? Where do you find your enjoyment ultimately?
Right. Right.
Because
Maria, I know where yours is.
you probably hear it too. I have patients that come in. I'll say, "What do you do for fun?" And they look at me like I'm stumping. And like, how dare you ask that question? I'm fun. What are you talking about? I'm trying to survive all the time.
Yeah, we have a question on our intake form. What do you do for creativity? And I can't tell you how many times women will be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And if women say that, guess what? Guys have zero creativity, right?
Yes, true.
Yeah, something that stretches you, something you enjoy, something just to get lost in a little bit that's healthy.
Yeah.
It's really important. I think we all of us have been motivated. You work hard, you get through it, and you keep grinding. And for 18 years, I was in a standard practice. I just kept grinding and grinding. You go,
Mhm.
okay, I'll take more time off next year. Then guess what? You don't because you're still grinding. And then the next year
Right.
you don't. The next year you don't. If you take time off, all your patients back up, and you're going to work twice as hard for the next month. And so it was really mentally challenging. And I think that's why we're seeing such a high suicide rate among doctors. It's through the roof. The
Burnout.
number one suicide profession is physicians now.
Physicians. Yeah. That's just,
Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, I was a corporate attorney and I raised two of my three kids while I was practicing law. So I 80-hour work weeks. I was doing IPOs on different coasts while living in the center of the country. Like I fed off of that, to be perfectly honest. Like, and so we understand women or anyone in life who kind of feels that way. And they say, I don't have time or I can't take those times out. And Maria and I are like, actually, if you took the 5 minutes, it's been shown that you're actually more productive the rest of the day, right? So this I don't have time or I can't quite fit that in mentality is really flawed because if you do, the rest of your day is actually better structured. You're probably going to get more done than if you just ground it out until the end of the day.
yeah. And so all those are so. I hope people listening get this and say, okay, maybe it's okay to go sit by the lake and look at the ducks accomplishing nothing a little bit. It's a lot of us. I know for me, if I was doing something that wasn't productive, I'd be guilty about thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I shouldn't be sitting here. Why am I doing this? We all kind of feel that way. And like when you're working those 80-hour weeks, I definitely get it, but I see the effects it had on my physiology. I was like, okay, you're gonna make you make more money, but you die.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you were never there, and
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
so important to figure out those connections and the bonds. And like you said, the decreased sex drive for a lot of women is not all hormonal. It's that you've been separated, you're independent, you're not spending time, whatever it is, not
You don't
engaging,
communicate. You don't
communicating.
communicate because you're both so focused on stuff. I mean, yesterday, just my husband and I have a pool and we have these two little Adirondack chairs at the back of it. And it's the one spot where our house doesn't cast a shadow in the afternoon. So you can get that late day sun. And it was like 4:55 and he and I just had slam days yesterday. And I just went out there with the dogs and I texted him and I said, you have a few minutes to come join me. Get down here. And he came outside and sat there. No, of course, then he stayed there for about an hour. I had to go in and make dinner, but the whole rest of our day was changed because of
Yeah.
it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Just having those few minutes of let me just breathe and enjoy. You worked hard to get that pool, right? So you
Right.
might as well enjoy it and be out there and relax and just not being distracted for a few minutes and just undivided attention is super important. Yeah, it's really, really. I mean, anyone listening, this is really take home medicine for you, right?
Well, Maria's got quite the practice. I mean, what's your day? How does your day start, Maria? Because you
Well,
and I have a non-negotiable.
yeah, I'm kind of besides myself if I don't start with a morning walk, and it's 99% of the times it's with my husband. And there is like one day a week that I do something different, and I will have to get that walk in like in the late morning or early afternoon. But yeah, that just is so grounding for me, being out in nature, connecting with my husband, you know. I don't know, getting about maybe 8,000 steps in the morning. I don't necessarily really count steps. I mean, sometimes I do because I kind of gamify it in my own mind, but I really am mostly out there for enjoyment, just like literal like movement. Like if I have an opportunity, like after sitting for an hour here, I may go take a little walk or do 10
Yeah.
squats or something like that. But it's just kind of bringing ways of bringing balance into the day that you're not like just always sitting or
Yeah,
always.
and always driven and always
Yeah.
grinding and just say, I'm going to go
Mhm.
for a walk and just shut the brain down. And what I find is when I'm out hiking, it's funny. A lot of the ideas I've had for talks, and I'm like, how do I explain this to people? I'll be on a hike or I'll be just relaxing somewhere. I'll go, oh, that's what I should do. But when you're
There's
thinking, what do I have to
something.
do? I'm going to sit here with this pen and like, you
Yep.
can't, you get into that writer's
There's
block.
something about forward motion that helps the brain kind of come up with solutions. So yeah, I get lots of ideas on walks. I
I
should
can
probably.
attest. I'm an hour behind her, and so she's an hour ahead of me. And then when I wake up in the morning, if I don't have a text from Maria with something, some input on the day or an idea, then I know she probably didn't get her walk in because that's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's funny. Like on Twitter, when I have all these thoughts, it's always after I do a good workout. And I have like,
Yeah.
blah,
No,
blah,
that's
blah, blah.
awesome.
People are like, don't work out anymore because we don't want to hear from you. But it is. I have these thoughts go, yeah, that makes sense. At least to me, it makes sense. Like when we question certain things or whatever, But yeah, I think it's so important what you're doing. And so, what do you think is the great menopausal myth? Like, what are some big myths that you go, yeah, here's the myth that people believe that's really not true in reality?
Well, there's 10 of them in the book, but I will mention one. And you kind of unwittingly kind of spoke about it, which I'm so honestly, I'm proud of you if I could actually say that. And that is, you said you have someone in your practice who deals with hormones and women's hormones and HRT because that's not my area of expertise. So you had enough humility to admit that that wasn't your area of expertise. So to that end, one of the myths in the book is just because someone has a prescription pad and can legally write a prescription for HRT, i.e., MD, DO, NP, PA, right? Whatever, doesn't mean that they're qualified. They have to know, they have to have an interest, they have to have had, extended training, mentorship, what have you. So,
Yeah, that's a huge point. That's so important because I see women come in and they've been on Vivel Dot, they've been on whatever they've been on for 10 years. They've never had their hormones checked ever.
and
They
they're
just go,
us,
oh, you have these symptoms. Here you go. That's it.
and
It's
maybe they got
crazy.
rid of hot flashes, but they're osteoporotic because they
Exactly
don't
right.
quite have enough. Or yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, and you also mentioned it earlier without realizing, but it's way more than the symptoms, and that's the thing that we want to get women focused on. I think we think it's either symptoms management or it's about this loss of fertility, loss of menstruation, and fertility and menstruation are just part or like one thing on the list of byproducts of an ovarian cycle, an endocrine cycle every month. What's actually going on is so much more than that. And that's why we get frustrated because the definition of menopause is 365 days without a period. Well, if that's what we're going to constantly focus women on, we're never going to get them to see the imperatives of the heart disease risk, of the brain risk, of the bone risk, of the cardiometabolic, of the gut changes and the cancer risk and everything else. So to us, that's one of the huge things that we want women to understand is that these hormones are doing so much in your body whether you have symptoms or not does not mean anything. So we have women who are 57 and they're still cycling and they don't have hot flashes and they're like, I must be good. And you'll see this probably, Ryan, with a lot of people that you work with who have figured out their cardiometabolic health and they're doing the right strength training and they're eating well and whatnot. They might prolong the kind of, unmasking of what menopause is doing to their body, but they're not immune from it. No one is immune from it. Hormone decline is going to hit us all, and it's going to bring up disease risk, period. Doesn't matter how healthy you come into this or unhealthy. So we're trying to get women to move away from the symptom focus, move away from the menstrual cycle relationship, and just focus on menopause as hormonal decline, understand what that means, and then choose or not to choose to address it, but do so from a place of your decision making, your thought process, not the person who's holding the prescription pad. Because once you decide whether or not you want to engage in hormone therapy later on, it's going to help you better identify which person with the prescription pad you should be talking to.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, all these things are so important because you don't wait till you blow up your engine to say, "Hey, maybe we should have changed your oil." That in medicine, it's so crazy. And I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many patients I've seen their A1C 3-month sugar average is 6.4. 6.5 is diabetes, and their doctor says, "Oh, you're fine, you're healthy, don't worry about it." And their insulin's
Mhm.
58 or something crazy like that. And you go, "Wait a minute." Like they're for 100% certain going to get diabetes. I can 100% tell you. But you see their A1C go from 5.2 to 5.7 to 5.9. Then they go, "Oh, now you're pre-diabetic." And they go, "Well, when you get diabetes, we'll treat you for it." It's like, why don't we prevent this stupid thing? And then they can get life insurance when they would need that down the road. Or wait till they have osteoporosis, then go, "Yeah, we should probably do something about this." Now you have it already. Now you got to reverse a condition rather than prevent it. It is so mind-boggling how many things. And Ben Bickman does such a good job of showing insulin resistance and all these diseases, Parkinson's, dementia, and all these depression, anxiety, bipolar, you name it. And no one does anything about it. They go, "Here's a pill for this, here's a pill for this." Why don't we treat the underlying cause, whether it's hormone imbalance, stress? And I think, a lot of the, especially in men, I see that, when we get them eating healthier, exercising, enjoying life, connecting with their partner, whatever it is, their testosterone naturally goes up, even without
Mhm.
replacement. Like they're decreasing that estrogen from the fat tissues. So
Right.
it's really we're in a really interesting time where I think most people would rather have things prevented than treat heroically,
You would hope, right? I
right?
mean, yeah, you would hope because that's the other thing we get from women too is I want to do menopause naturally. I don't want to be dependent upon these hormones. Like, okay, but what does
You
natural menopause
already
look
are. You've
like?
been dependent upon them since basically from puberty onwards.
Exactly. They have been something keeping you going, but also what does 65, 70 look like naturally postmenopausal? It's like 8 to 12 prescriptions. It's, having usually some disease risk that you're constantly managing, whether it's the high blood pressure, whether it's the broken hip, whether it's the whatever. So, you know, getting women to kind of see like what is menopause without hormones, which they mistake as natural menopause without hormones, what does that look like? And do you understand that and then decide whether or not maybe the hormones are important?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think having people who specialize in this area is so critically important, because your doctor saying, "Oh, you don't need that. You're fine." You get a middle-aged guy like me telling you, "Oh, you're fine. Okay. You're not interested in, sex with your husband." I'm shocked. I mean, you may hear the same, but how many people that like are in their 50s or 60s, they just sleep in separate rooms.
We have more clients like that than you realize. And it's no judgment. If maybe your husband has a CPAP machine and
Yeah,
you
yeah, sure.
literally cannot, sure. But many times it's simply just almost like an energetic divorce, right? And this intimacy loss that's going on there. And that's sad because male or female, doesn't matter who your partner is. Like we as humans, we're not meant to be alone. We really aren't, and whether that's connecting on a daily basis with our friends and our neighbors and our community and our family, or having a partner who's with us all the time, like, this isolation sort of thing that happens as we age is really debilitating to our health, both physically and mentally. So it's sad. And libido, oftentimes we need communication, where we as women who aren't versed in what's going on during this midlife shift blame ourselves and we can't explain it to our partners, and then our partners take it personally, and then we just
Yeah.
sort of have this degradation of the relationship happen. So
Yeah, it's a huge disconnect for sure. I mean, I see
huge.
people out to dinner and they're like on their phones looking at social. They don't even engage, talk, look at each other, nothing. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, why'd you go out to dinner? And like, yeah, let's go to dinner and we're not going to communicate at all. I mean, it's
Right.
amazing how often I see that. I always kind of tune in on that. Like, wow, I wonder how
Yeah.
things are at home. What do you do at home? Like watch TV and you don't, right? It's like you
Yeah.
don't engage at all or discuss something or learn from each other. It is, I think we've gotten to that point. And I think that's why we're struggling so much is that if we don't have that connection at home, we're not going to connect with people, out in the community and stuff.
Right. Right. I think after 4 years too of, what kind of pandemic response that we had about almost treating each other like we're dangerous to each other, right? Because of
Yeah, that I'm
these
telling you,
things.
and what's coming. I see kids all the time and they're afraid of people, like, afraid of to be around that you're a vector of some disease or whatever. It's really something. I think that mentally, like what you're saying, it's really going to affect us hormonally. Just being that constant fear of other people is not good for you, right? Stress is good in the short term, from, sauna, cold plunges, whatever it is, but that chronic, unrelenting stress, that's why we have to learn to breathe. And these things that you're talking about are so critically important, right? It will help your hormones more than working out 4 hours a day.
Right. Yeah.
So I have to ask you both, what's life's best medicine for you? I'll start with Maria. So what's life's best, since this is the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where do you go when things are tough? Like, what got you through the lockdowns? What motivates you to keep going? Those kind of things.
Yeah. So social connection, most important at the top of the list would be my family, my husband, my children. I'm thankful to still have my parents, my siblings. So, and then friends, of course. So just like really connecting with other people. And then, my faith actually plays definitely a role in like life's best medicine for me. And then just kind of physical movement in nature. Like I've got a little floor, treadmill, under the desk treadmill in the house, and it pinch hits every now and then, but like I really need to be in the great outdoors, blue skies, green trees, marshy, walks and all that stuff. So yeah, that's it for me. And the reason, honestly, that's the reason I work on my health. It's not to be healthy for healthy's sake. It's so I can, kind of envision this long life with my husband, traveling, being around for grandkids if my kids ever get their act together, stuff like that. That's really why I do it. It's just to really live a good life with the people that I love.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. All those are critically important for sure.
Thank you.
And she stole all my answers.
Yeah, no, Chris was like, darn it, I should have went first. Dude, stole my answers.
At the end of the day, it's like, it's really the only meaningful stuff. So Kristin, you can give your spin.
I think, this is, in all full disclosure, this is one of the things that brought Maria and me together a long time ago. Was we had a half-hour conversation between two strangers to one another, women. And by the end of it, I was like, wow, I really connect with this person. And much of it was built on, we're moms to 7 boys, and boy moms kind of are a different breed. And we love our husbands. We've both been in our marriages for well over 30 years, each of us. And there's just a commitment to that I think will always be the most important thing to me. Is just my husband and my family and my faith are really the most important things. I will throw in my doggies. I have dogs that I've had my whole life, and we just kind of keep having them. I'm a golden retriever crazy mama, and they're like therapy to me, right? They get me out. They pay attention. I could be working out in our home gym and they will look over the thing and say to me like, Mom, your heart rate's too high, which it's intentionally that high, but like my dogs are that tuned into me. So I'm lucky with that. But truly it's, being here to serve my family and my friends, being here to serve my God, and, being able to experience the world. I was an airline pilot's daughter, traveled the world before I was 18, almost every continent. I continue to travel, and that sort of just experiencing life. I mean, we do this even with our kids. We don't give them gifts, we give them experiences. That's how it's been. And just, next week I'm racing down to Texas to go help my married son with an ACL surgery. And my husband looks at me, he's like, you're nuts. Why are you going down there? He's married, he has a wife, he has everything. I said, because he asked. And I feel blessed by that, right? To be in my mid-50s and have adult children who still want me around, 1. And 2, to be an adult woman in my mid-50s who's still able to pick up and head down to Texas and, haul his 200-pound butt up 3 flights of stairs to his apartment and, pinch hit and manage for him. So that's just what drives me in life, is just that the family, faith, and connection outside.
Wow. I mean, those are both amazing. And that's why I started this podcast, Low Carb MD. If I talked about faith or connects people, like talk about keto. We don't talk about this stuff, right? And you realize how much of an effect that has. If you're missing that part of the equation where you can say, okay, God, it's on your hands. I'm not dealing with this, right? I can't fix politics. I can't fix all this stuff, but I'll just do my part I can. And so when you can do that, instead of worrying all day about all the stuff you can't control, I think that's a huge thing. And then these connections come out of it, that you're going to be kind and decent and have grace for people. All these things are so important. And it's amazing how many, especially doctors, get so upset. I was going to use a different word, but they get really upset when you talk about this, How can you talk about that stuff? You're a scientist. Like, well, it works for me. It works for you. It works for you. And so I've had so many guests on that faith is an important thing in their life, and so, it's one of those darn important things. And so how do people track you two down?
They can find us on Instagram. So that would be Wise and Well. They can just put that into the search bar. We try to be really education forward there. Every once in a while we'll drop a meme because, laughing is also good medicine, right?
Yes.
But we do like to be education forward on Instagram. You will probably never find a photo on Instagram of me and Kristin dancing. Not that we don't dance at weddings and what have you, but we're about education on Instagram. And then our website is the same thing, wiseandwell.me.
Yeah.
And you're nationwide, right?
Yes, nationwide.
Even
and
international.
International.
And international. Awesome
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
if you're out of whack, give these two a call, right? You send them an email, track them down, because I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, I've been stunned by how much, and I'm almost embarrassed, like in my previous life, 18 years, menopausal stuff was all about like what you're talking about, symptom control, and if you're having hot flashes, we get that better. Otherwise, it's dangerous for you, that kind of thing. But to see the impact, it's so amazing, especially when we marry these two things of metabolic health. I mean, they're so critical: hormone replacement, metabolic health, and if you're just doing one, you're missing a big part of the equation. And so working together is just so great to see that. And just to see, I mean, I think you see so many people, their life gets better. They go, I'm laughing more, I'm enjoying my family. And like, that's what life's about. It's not about how much money you have in the bank account, as long as you can pay your bills, right? But at some point it gets to be like, okay, like enjoy it. And that's where I was 18 years old. I was making a ton more money than I am now, but it was like I had handcuffs. I never could enjoy the weekend or just sit there and waste time because I knew I had 1,000 things to take care of. So, making those changes, and anyone listening, you're getting tons of wisdom here about life, really. It's like what really matters, what's important, and putting those priorities in, and, making yourself and I'm telling you, I mean, I just did a podcast, just a little podcast by myself, because I watched my parents decline, for several reasons. And, they're both in their mid 80s. But, being sedentary, not getting out of bed, not moving. So I've been on both of them. They started moving again and they're doing a lot better. But, it's like none of us want to be a burden to our kids. We don't want to be like, where you can't get up off the ground if you fall. These are really critical. Six-pack abs are one thing, but being functional, where you can go and enjoy a long life and then just drop dead one day and not be critically ill for years. Like, who wants to live like that? It's really important, I think, and all these things. If hormones help you, if doing low carb, cutting out the processed food, whatever it is, getting enough sleep, enjoying life, having faith, whatever it is, all these things factor in. You can't just do one thing and think you're going to be perfect. It's not just fixing your diet. It's a big picture. So I appreciate you both. And thanks for coming on. And everyone, if you want to go and listen to Low Carb MD, we had them on twice and it was amazing, amazing stuff. So yeah. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, take a minute, just breathe, relax. If you're driving in your car, listen to this, breathe a little bit, take it easy, find your peace. Yeah. Thank you both. Great. I greatly appreciate you joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day. And thank you for listening. And thank you for your support.